We're ready. Let me do a quick intro. So, hey, hello, everybody. My name is Tim Nunzik. I'm happy to organize this event for Mindfulness at MPK. And I'm really honored to have David Landau as our first speaker in the speaker series. I've met David about 5 weeks ago when he was hanging out at my house, which is like a really nice country house up in the hills of San Carlos. And I was really impressed with his presence and his solid grounding in spirituality and mindfulness. And especially when we started talking about our generation, millennials, and how we have so much information coming to us today, and we all kind of need mindfulness. In our day-to-day life. And you had mentioned that you had worked with millennials and coaching them, and then that's kind of where this idea came to have you come and talk to us, because I think you have a lot to share. And not only you're a magician, and a masterful meditator, but I think you're a great coach and speaker, and I look forward to what you have to share with the rest of the community.
Thanks, Tim. It's really great to be here today.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when a lot of us think about meditation, we often think about people like my friend Adam Baruch, who is sitting in this beautiful location in nature with trees, mountains, and lakes. But meditation and consciousness is about a lot more than that. What happens when police officers meditate? What happens when children meditate? What happens if we sneak in a 5-minute bathroom meditation in the middle of a really big workday? And I'd like to share with you a few ideas about meditation and mindfulness that they're not all about a cushion, they're not all about peacefulness. And my favorite aspect about meditation and my research is about the magic of consciousness. And I'm going to define magic not as some mystical phenomenon that's out of reach or some fantasy or delusion, but just as really advanced science we don't fully understand. And through a lot of research over 20 years of practice and dedication in my entire life, I found some of the real magic that exists in the practice of meditation and the study of neuroscience and the analysis of this thing that we call mindfulness. So everybody meditates, not just wonderful monks, not just delightful shamans from Italy, not just folks like myself. Pro athletes meditate, a lot of business people meditate. Tim Ferriss is the world's most popular podcast. He says about 90% of the world-class performers on there all meditate. So of the many definitions of meditation, I'd like to roll with the one of honing and refining and training consciousness. And so what is consciousness? What is conscious awareness? What can we do with it? So a little bit of background about me in terms of the lens I am giving you for meditation. I've researched and practiced for, as I said, about 20 years. I started when I was 12, I'm 32. I've had a lot of different spiritual experiences. I've had a lot of different repeatable mystical experiences. Started 13 companies, spent time at Stanford Business School, lived out here in the Bay Area for about 4 years. And I've met all sorts of people, from skeptics to people all the way down the deep spiritual rabbit hole and completely living it. And one of the best treasures I found is you can completely live this stuff in a regular life. Some of these slides have a lot of info. Don't worry about focusing on reading them, because if you email me, I'm happy to give you the whole deck. So I first learned the style of meditation I practice most, which is the style of Zen, in my martial arts dojo. And I practiced Kung Fu and Tai Chi. And the special thing about this dojo was it was all adults practicing with intense ferocity. And you are not allowed into sparring class in this dojo, the School of Chinese Martial Arts, unless you meditated. And a requirement for higher level classes is you have to sit for 2 hours with no thought, no movement. Not a sneeze, not scratching itch. It was very intense. The teacher, Robert Brown, was respected internationally. He studied at the Shaolin Temple in China. He really knew what he was talking about. There's some basic general benefits of meditation I'd like to put out there. If anybody's wondering, well, why is it not just inner peace? The 4 key ones of meditation increases gray matter. And so for anybody working in tech, anybody working at all, gray matter is the part of your brain related to intelligence. So you can literally become neurologically, biologically, measurably smarter by meditating, which is really neat. It's a really nice incentive. Meditation can lower your blood pressure. It has really direct health benefits. It can control brain states. It can do a lot of stuff, help you sleep better, etc. And it's pretty measurable. So if we haven't seen these images yet, if you haven't really looked deep into this, you can measure the effects of meditation. This is after just 10 minutes meditating, a difference in brain activity. And without reading all these words, understanding what is anxiety, what is the physical correlate for emotions, why do most people meditate? And the reasons most people do is this thing in the middle called the amygdala, this big blue thing, is where we process most of our emotions, most of our flight or flight response. It's our lizard brain, it's what is deep and core to us, was evolved over millions and millions of years. And meditation helps us control this part of ourselves that we often try to deny, we often try to shift away from or ignore, and integrate it into the totality of our being. Just a brief treatise, we actually do have 3 brains, it's not just one, it's really helped simplify. So the lizard reptilian brain, that's very reactive. If a punch is coming at you, if you have a stressful coworker, you're caught up in traffic, that's what activates. And if you feel love, if you feel most general emotions, that's your midbrain, and of course the intellectual brain is the one that we prize. And the danger, the reason why most people need to meditate is they ignore these middle 2. Some people are in tune with emotions, but most people ignore this core brain. And we don't understand how it works. We don't get the neuroscience of it, so we try to force it with pills, with exercise, with games, with dopamine release, and other stuff like that. So the basic chart of what happens in the world is we have an emotional stimulus. In the old world it was a lion. We have all this stuff going through these different parts of our brain, and the viscera means literally our guts. So when we're stressed, we feel cortisol. Cortisol affects our blood and guts, our heart, our liver, our kidneys, and we feel this autonomic nervous system response. So we literally feel emotion in our body reacts to emotion. Most people get that, but it's a really important premise for what I'm going to go into next. So the fight or flight response is something most of us get. You're scared, you're worried something's coming at you. Do you hit it head on or do you run away? But what often happens in our culture, especially professionally, is we can't fight with aggression, we can't escape. And so what usually happens is we're paralyzed in worry and fear. And so it's fight or flight, but there's also a freeze response. And for anybody who's ever heard of emotional trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder, how this is linked with emotions in the physical body is if you're a deer in the ancestral environment and you get scared, maybe a lion's running after you, or you're human and you almost miss a car accident, you tense up, you clench your muscles. And what that actually does is that holds the cortisol in place. And if you don't shake your body a lot like a deer does, that stress stays in you. If you don't exercise, if you don't deep breathe, that stress will hold in you deeply, turn into tension, turn into cramps, turn into trauma, turn into something called depression. So a lot of people don't like meditating. I read an article recently, somebody was warning against mindfulness. They said when she sits mindfully, presently, with no thought, just trying to focus on the breath, all this stuff comes up, all this emotion, all this yuck that she wants to get away from, maybe memories from the past, things on her to-do list, because those things weren't evoked out of the body. We didn't get rid of that cortisol. We didn't process, not just on the to-do list, but we didn't process the emotion. And so it comes up. And so if that happens when you or a friend is meditating, what actually needs to happen is healing, which can be part of meditation, but not meditation itself. So the key reason to meditate is to put a choice between that stimulus and response. Something comes at you, that punch, that lion, that car, that deadline, that angry person, that family member, that romantic partner. And you respond reactively, automatically, with whatever emotion arises, like a lion or a deer in the wild. Or like we started, for those of you who are here, can we pause between the inhale and the exhale? Can we pause between the stimulus and response? Can we pause between what's coming at us and how we respond emotionally? We get really, really angry, we get really, really nervous. Can we just be still and peaceful? Because this thing that's in the middle of our brain, this thing that's the amygdala, we're at peace with it, we understand it. And with the subtle awareness we have of our mind and body, we can, in a sense, control it. So I'd like to offer a basic breathing exercise. And I'd offer for anybody to close your eyes. And if you want to hold something, you can, but you want to put it down. And this is just going to be about 30 seconds. And this is going to be a demo in your own body of the stress response. So before we start, just try to take a deep breath. And exhale. 2 more to oxygenate the blood. And the next inhale, breathe in as much as you can and hold it. So hold your breath as I talk. We're going to do this just for a minute. If you feel faint or like you're going to black out, breathe normally, but you can hold at least 6 minutes. And as you hold your breath, be mindful of what you feel. Is your chest tense? Is your belly tense? Is your face tense? Are you wanting to breathe already? In these seconds of silence, how do you feel? Okay, we're actually going to stop now, and so go ahead and exhale and breathe normally. Just raise your hand if you felt any tension or stress at all in your body. Cool, so most of us. So what you literally did is you literally got to know your autonomic nervous system. By holding your breath longer than you usually do, you allow your body to release some cortisol, which is just a way of saying, hey, we may be on the track of danger, we stop breathing, so pay attention. But you actually didn't need to be stressed. You're completely safe, you're sitting down, you're in full control, you're not trapped. So what's the value of doing this? Well, there's a lot of people who really explored this. One who's the most famous, the most powerful meditator I've ever heard of, aside from great monks, is a guy named Wim Hof. This man has been named the Iceman. He's won a ton of world records, Guinness World Records. He's hiked Everest in shorts. He submerges himself in ice. And like David Bland, he can hold his breath for insane amounts of time, like 17 minutes, with no brain damage, contrary to what we learned in middle school. Now, how is all of this possible? So there's meditation for peacefulness. There's meditation for stress relief. There's meditation to become energized, which I'll go into later. But what happens when you can control the parts of your body that are regulated to homeostasis? How you generate heat? This guy figured that out by studying these ancient techniques. And instead of 40 years, he holds workshops where you can learn in 4 days how to do this. You can literally go meditate in shorts in the North Pole with him and be completely fine. Whatever you think of that, whatever you've tried, this is a meditation superpower. This is what you can do with your awareness, with your breath. It's really awesome. So I'd like to give you another exercise. It's the one we just did, but we're going to do it for longer. And this is what Wim Hof does. He holds his breath. He's mindful of the time. He consciously relaxes himself. And I'm going to add a few visualizations. So let's warm up again. So take another really deep breath and close your eyes. Exhale. And inhale. Exhale. Full breath. Inhale. Exhale. The last inhale more. As you hold it, try to inhale a bit more. Try to fill your lungs, your chest, stretch the intercostal muscles just below the pectorals. And pause and hold that breath within yourself. You may want to pinch your nose. And just relax. Relax your hands, your arms, your face. Relax your chest, your belly, your legs. Now we're at 25 seconds. And to give something for your mind to be active with, visualization, imagine your skin breathing in a turquoise blue light into your entire body. It comes in your chest for 40 seconds. It goes in your brain. It nourishes you. It fills you with light. You are oxygen rich. There's already oxygen in your blood. 50 seconds. You'll be silent for just a bit. Keep going. Raise your hand if you have a little bit of tension, but you can deal with it. Raise your hand if you have a lot of tension, but you can deal with it. Raise your hand if it's almost overwhelming. Alright, a little endurance test. Just keep your hand up, and if it gets to be overwhelming, raise your hand. Try to hold it for 119. Another 20 seconds. You're doing great. Another 11, 10, 9, 8, 2, 1. Exhale. Breathe normally. That was fun, yeah? So we went from testing this breath holding thing to feeling cortisol to literally growing our performance 300%. You just held your breath for a minute and a half. It's 3 times longer we did in the beginning. You practiced a little bit of what this guy Wim Hof does, what any human being can do, without abandoning your life and going to a monastery for 40 years. Although that's a wonderful path, and I look forward to doing it for a little while each day, each year. And so you just demonstrated in your own body and your own mind how you can deal with this thing called cortisol. So this is a diagram you could look up later. This is what actually happens to your body with tonal meditation. There's a bunch of words in Sanskrit that if you're really curious you can Google. And it pretty much shows how with muscle contractions, visualizations, and breath, you can do the same thing. I discovered this naturally when I was 14. In school we had a fire drill. I grew up in Michigan. It was snowy, it was windy, it was cold, and I didn't have any prep. I didn't have any jacket. We all had to run outside. And all I was able to do was use my awareness. I had no goosebumps. I was relaxed. We were out there for half an hour, and it wasn't until the teachers tried to shield the wind from my body with theirs, dressed in their coats and shivering, till I thought, oh, am I supposed to be cold? And then I got cold. Kind of cool, realizing this power is not something that we all need a lot of training for. And so just a little bit more diagrams. If you get the slide deck, it's clearer over email what actually happens with your body, with your organs. And so why is this useful? Well, for most of us, we meditate, or we want to meditate, to control our mind. And for those of us who don't have a habit of practice, we go to all this stuff. Video games, food, sex, drinks, like distraction, fun stuff, sparkly unicorns, working out, whatever. Because of the emotional state it'll bring us. Because of the physical reaction it will evoke in our body. And so is all of this stuff necessary? Well, no. Is it useful in certain scenarios based on your unique life and context? Maybe. But I'd like to argue, like some of the yogis I've researched, who have sat in laboratories, sat in hospitals around the world, not eating, not drinking, for days on end, and their bodies were completely fine. That if you really go down this path, beyond peace, beyond emotional control, you can really do a lot with your body that almost belongs in the realm of myth and legend. So I'm just going to touch on how that works. Hey, welcome. And so the best way to train meditation, to train the stress response, is with a stopwatch. You can have Vipassana, you can have Zen, where you breathe deeply, where you follow the breath. But something very generalizable and immediate is this exercise I showed you. And in the appendix of this slide deck, I have a link to about 20 different types of meditation. So this tomo, or half tomo that we did, is only one of 20, Zen is one of 20, and every different type of meditation has different uses based on your preferences, goals, time, and training. And so when you think about it, do we always have to experience the emotions right as they are, the anger, the intensity? Well, no, we can pause, and we can transform them to peacefulness. When my grandfather visited me back in Michigan, he was walking up the driveway and he fell. And he cracked his head open on the driveway. He was gushing blood. And my grandma, who was 75, couldn't bend down to help him. She was freaking out. My mom was freaking out. He was barely conscious. And I had an option. And thankfully, because of training, I didn't freak out. I stayed calm. I breathed. I ran. Being peaceful doesn't mean you have to move slowly your whole life. I ran inside, got an ice pack with my other phone. I called 911. I held him. I bandaged his head. I made sure he was okay. He was a priority. I knew my grandma would be fine. And eventually, got to the hospital. He got stitched up. He got an MRI. He was okay. But what happened if I freaked out? If I didn't know what to do? If I completely panicked? He might have died. What happens if you're in the car and there's a car speeding towards you at 90 miles an hour, going in the wrong lane? Do you freak out and not know what to do and crash? Or can you stay calm and say, this is danger, I need to get out of danger. Gently turn the wheel the exact amount you need and be safe. This can apply to anything in life, whether it's family, whether it's somebody insulting you that you have to be peaceful with, whether it's a work assignment. This whole stimulus and response thing is really critical, really core. So if you want help meditating, there's some really cool technology out there. This is Fire. It clips on your waist, and it can monitor your breathing. And it can give you data on how deep your breathing is. It's really awesome. There's some other stuff mentioned in there. There's a used headband. This is $200 or $300. It is probably the best investment I have ever made. You put this on your head. Can we take questions at the end?
Commentary, but that's okay.
Sure.
We have one of those used in the meditation rooms.
Great.
In like building 17, I think.
Building 17, okay, so you can use them That sounds great. Thanks, Tim. What this can do is this can actually track your brainwaves, track your meditations, and quantify your experience. And this may not unlock all the superpowers I mentioned, will mention, but it's a great start, especially if you like data. And so, extremely general overview, our beta waves are the really high frequency waves. When we're working, when we're listening to music, when we have caffeine, alpha waves are a bit calmer, they're ideal to be in. I'd say most of us are in alpha right now. If you're distracted, if you have a lot of thoughts, if you have some anxiety, you might be more in beta. But when you can get into theta and delta waves, that used to be rumored to be uncontrollable, but experienced meditators can go in these states at will. You get very deep peacefulness. And if I have a very intense day that's completely packed, 16 hours of activity or more, and I can't take a nap in the middle, with my training, and with the training of any experienced meditator, you can stop, breathe, take 5 minutes, with practice, go into theta, and come out of it like you've had a deep, restful sleep. Because one of the things that happens in sleep is the ion channels in your physical brain open and release toxins, among repair and other stuff. And cortisol, among other things, are some of the toxins that allow us to experience stress. So thankfully with neuroscience, we're finding out the reasons that for thousands of years have been touted to say, here's why meditation is good for you, which is really exciting. Meditation's been used in schools instead of detention. Meditation's actually useful. Instead of saying time out and plan your revenge, actually go out and become a more peaceful person so you don't end up there again. And I'd like to play you a short video on this product called Finder's Course. So I have a friend and colleague named Jeffrey Martin who researched mystical traditions and essentially found the best ones. So I'll play this super quick for you guys, and I hope you like it.
The previous slide.
No, I have a YouTube link in here, but that's okay. We can go on the website. It's just worth it.
Oh, gotta connect real quick. It's the FB guest.
Cool. So while we're connecting, do we have any questions from anybody? I'm sorry the presentation was a bit glitchy. Any brief questions or commentary on any of that?
You can also unmute on BJN and ask if you want.
Yeah.
How often do you recommend and how long should we practice holding our breath? Like every morning, a minute and a half to progressively increase?
So if you want that specific style, it depends on your goals and what you experience and what's generalizable. I'd recommend graphing it, and if you'd like this breath holding technique, I'd recommend start with something that is manageable and replicatable. And like lifting weights, do it in reps. These are reps for your brain. So I'd recommend starting with a minute. We all just did a minute and a half, so you know you can do a minute outside of the supportive environment. Is it ready? Cool. And after a week of a minute, go to a minute and a half and do that for a week. And just get your brain used to it in a step-ladder approach. And when you pass the 5 and 6 minute mark, and you feel fine, and you do fine at cognitive tests, then you'll really get to a level where you can deal with the cortisol and stress in your body and stay calm. And that will have generalizable, measurable effects for the rest of your life. If you meditate with just breath or Zen, you will find peacefulness. But if you actually increase stress while meditating through holding your breath, it gives you something to focus on that's specific. Not just what comes up from the day, what comes up with your thoughts, or other pains in your body. And it's a really nice way to stay focused.
Is there an immune system benefit to that?
There are many immune system benefits, yeah. If you look up the research, T cells, inflammatory response, there's a lot of research on it. So this is really extraordinary. There's sound? Sounds on my computer.
Question. Who I in pursuit of an eternal truth. Across all cultures, all traditions, and all philosophies. With dedicated practice and commitment, these explorers of the inner world would spend a lifetime just to catch a glimpse of an answer to this question. And those who caught more than just a glimpse found something indescribable. Something beyond the limitations of the self. An awakening into a persistent state of inner peace and well-being. A state of flow, joy, and ease. Yet there are no guarantees for the adventurous. There are those who seek but do not find on this quest, dedicating years to practices that yield no fruit, having no map for awakening. But in 2006, a group of scientists set out to research the phenomenon of awakening. Traveling across 6 continents and studying various lineages, they cataloged over 1,000 methods. And over the course of 10 years and 9 trials, they isolated 26 as the most effective. A millennia of wisdom, distilled into 26 practices, combined with the best methods that Western psychology has discovered for lasting happiness and well-being. The Finder's Course Protocol is the first roadmap to awakening, integrating ancient wisdom with modern science to safely, quickly, and reliably bring about transformation. Built using gold standard psychological measurements and the latest biometric technologies, the subjective experience of awakening has finally been made objective. And most importantly, the protocol works. 99% of participants reported significant improvements in key scientific metrics of well-being. Reduced stress, reduced negative emotion, decreases in depression, increases in overall happiness, increased sense of life meaning, even significantly improved relationships. And for the majority, 73% of participants experienced what can only be described as an awakening, a shift into a persistent state of inner peace and lasting well-being. For the first time in history, those who seek can truly find.
That's so cool. I just get full of emotion every time I see that, because it's really epic. If you think about this concept of enlightenment, it's been really mysterious throughout millennia. We think we need all these particular things. We think it's only for a select few. But really, enlightenment is something that, in a sense, can be measured, can be shared, can transcend religions and belief systems. Enlightenment itself is something that really is hard to define. It's asymptotic, meaning you can always approach it, but to actually be enlightened is something that is still kind of a taboo topic. And the definition changes so much over different societies. I'd say it's better not to look for that as a goal, because it's such an amorphous thing. But the philosophy and psychology behind it, persistent inner peace, being aware of your experience, having an expanded identity of who and what you are, beyond your body, beyond your mind, this identity that some religions call a soul. Like, what is that? Who and what are we? We chop off our hands, we chop off our legs, we're still us. And so what Finder's Course does is it teaches you these different practices with the intention that you will find one or two that work for you. It's not a protocol that says do 26 every day for the rest of your life. If you're interested, it's a very serious commitment. It's 2 to 3 hours a day, and it's not cheap. I think it's $2 to $3 grand. I don't benefit from it personally, but if anybody's interested in joining, I can introduce you to the founder. And it's something that it's intensive practice for several months. But if you want to change your mind, if you want to train your mind, like you want to train your body, build a gymnastic skill, build weight training skill, learn how to code, any significant skill we can have in this world, then this is one of the best things I've found. So what other benefits do we get from meditation? Emotional alchemy is one that I find really fun, being able to generate an emotional state of will. Like, why are people in this world so angry? Why are they full of haste? Why are they full of aggression? Why do they demand things from us? Why are people really shy? Why don't they want to talk? Speak up. Why are some people so excited? They talk really fast and they're really excited about everything they want to do, and they want to tell you what they're doing tomorrow, and they want to tell you what they did yesterday, and they want to eat chocolate and eat caffeine, like have life be really fun. Why are some people loving and kind? I feel weird. But what is this state of love, not attached to a person, an idea of pleasure, this abstraction many of us have forgotten? We're labeled with shoulds, what our family is, what people in the world should do and usually don't. So meditation can help us figure out how to get to different emotional states. And because of that, it can help us separate from our emotions, not just understanding them neurologically or biochemically, but realizing they're different aspects of self, realizing that they're like clothing that we wear, that we can choose to put on, that we can choose to take off for different uses. And one very sterile definition of enlightenment can be related as transcending emotion, meaning emotions are something that you can use rather than be used by. Not necessarily be emotionless, but drive the car rather than ride in it. So there's this next thing called breath of fire. It's another cool little technique. And we've talked about how to be peaceful. We've talked about how to change emotions. And this is the next most intense breathing exercise. And the last one we'll go through. So I'd recommend putting down something if you're holding it, or just holding it in a way that won't get in your way. And sit in a way without your legs crossed. Try to have your pelvis open, relax the belly. A lot of us sunk in unconsciously because of social norms. And this one you actually don't have to prep for. And this is one that I'll tell you the effects after we do it because I want you to experience it. So a quick demo from the front and the side. How you actually do breath of fire is you push muscularly the belly in and you exhale with force. And an inhale happens naturally with no effort. So you do it very fast. And just a quick demo before we do it as a group, it looks like. And so that sound from my nose was the breath moving so quickly it had friction against the back of my throat. So we're going to do about 50 of these. So I'd offer if you want to close your eyes, if that helps, fine. If you'd rather not, that's fine. But put one hand on your belly. And you don't need any warm-up, and don't worry about any exactness, and let's go ahead. Felt kind of energized from doing that. Kind of intense of a breathing exercise. But we didn't do more than 50 because if you have any toxins whatsoever, you'll start to get some mucus being produced. So if we did 200, you'd have to blow your nose a few times. But just pay attention to your awareness. Are you more awake a little bit? Did you just flush your brain with a bunch of oxygen? Did you achieve what, based on your social conditioning, you try to achieve with coffee, with increasing your blood flow? Yeah, what you literally did is you got a ton of blood into your brain and you flushed out a ton of stuff from your lungs. It was so energizing, it's so priming to your nervous system that if you literally do this whenever you want an energy boost, 150, 200 times, you will get so jazzed. And this tones the abs like nothing I've ever seen. If you're waiting in line at the grocery store, if you're walking down the hallway, you have to relax your belly. You can't tense it. We usually tense it. It's really bad for breathing. But if you just do this anytime you're standing or even walking, if you can isolate it, it's really good for all these other measurements of health. We could talk about Kalabhakti breathing for an hour and a half if we wanted to. This is really exciting, really fun, and it's a great way to wake up in the morning. So now we get to the stuff that's really, really fun for me. And we also get to the territory that makes all the skeptics jump up and say, hey, that's BS. So I'd just like to share that everything I'm about to say and all the slides I'm about to bring up, and we'll have a lot of time for questions at the end, are things that I've researched extremely heavily, I've experienced, and I've seen replicated. But if you think it's baloney, then just treat it as superstition and forget about it and treat it as wishful thinking. But it's really cool, and I can swear to you that this stuff is exciting enough that even if you, in your rational mind, believe it's impossible, if part of you hopes it's true, maybe it's a motivator for your path beyond everything we've talked about. So there's an organization called the Society for Scientific Exploration. And just like the CERN lab in Switzerland, which measures particle physics, and just like the Pear lab in Princeton, which actually measures consciousness, which actually is possible, the SSC looks at what the human being, what the human mind, what consciousness is and what it can do. And I heard of this from their president, William Bankston. He's a man who teaches 3 workshops a year. And his teacher was apparently from the planet or star system Alpha Centauri, kind of a jokester. And he had these amazing healing abilities. If people had broken bones and he worked on them, they could heal really fast. If they had open wounds, they would seal a little bit faster. What Bankston does is he goes to Brown University, he goes to Indiana, he goes all over the world, and he treats mice that are injected with cancer. And if you look this stuff up or you email me for it, he'll take mice, they'll get injected with a double dose of cancer, double lethal dose, they'll get tumors, he'll hold them in his hands, and he'll use his awareness, and the cancer vanishes. And the mice get injected again with cancer, and they're kind of vaccinated, it doesn't come back. And it's kind of weird, like what, we have a cure for cancer and it's magic mind powers? Like that doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense, which is why people are researching it. Because it happened enough times, and it was replicated enough times to take seriously. So for me, the benefit of meditation isn't just in my day-to-day experience. It's when I broke my arm from giving my partner a piggyback ride and running and having a lot of fun, and then we fell, and it cracked and it tore, and I had all this damage. And I thought, okay, this healing stuff sounds cool, maybe I'll try it. And I healed it, in double the time, without surgery, validated by an fMRI, validated by CAT scans. And all the surgeons at Stanford Hospital were like, wow, you actually healed. How'd you do that? And I told them, and they said, well, that's something that is called the placebo effect. It's something that is mind over body. You're kind of convincing yourself, and there's a mind-body connection, but it's not woo-woo, it's not magic, it's not anything soul or spiritual, it's just something we don't understand. And so I'd offer to everybody, anything that you ever hear of that is labeled spiritual healing or mystical healing or something that you think is in the realm of, okay, I want to run away from this, it's not actually real, or it might be delusional. I'd recommend actually giving serious research into this idea. Because if I were to tell you you can control your body temperature without demonstrating or telling you about Wim Hof, and you believed you could, like I did when I was 14, maybe you could. So what is this thing called the placebo effect? How do we engage in it actively? How do we control it? We know that through meditation, through stress increases cortisol, lowers T cell counts, you can get sicker, infections can last longer, people die on holidays, people die on birthdays, people die on Mondays in weird increasing amounts. So there is some correlation even between life and death and mind and body. And so the bridge between everything we learned growing up and the science of this, it's been around 4,000 years, it's actually being understood, is something called the subtle body. And without going too much in detail, if you've ever heard of the word aura, this book goes into it in incredible detail. And instead of some like woo-woo magic cola thing, it's actually something that has been studied, understood, described, linked to organs, and everything else. And it's actually measurable in 200 millivolts, which is the most exciting fact I have ever heard about what people call the aura or the soul of wishful thinking. And so for those of you who are curious about this, here's a really couple cool books that talk about it a little bit more. And as far as measuring consciousness, and as far as working with auras, there's a friend named Adam Curry who's in Southern California. And he actually made an app that can generate synchronicities. SyncText is really cheap, it's free for a week, it's like $7 a month. And it can send you a text message at a certain time that generates meaning. And when Adam explained the technology, I was pretty mind blown. I'm not a developer, but I could follow a little bit. And so this is the best way to experience what happens when software and consciousness meet. At an expanded sense, Princeton University that could measure and work with consciousness globally, that saw spikes in consciousness at 9/11, that saw spikes of consciousness at Obama's election and inauguration. He built an app that actually uses this technology, uses this subtle biofield that we all have, but barely understand at all, to figure out, can consciousness be measured and tracked, which is really exciting. So if you look at the placebo effect in a little bit more detail, what happens when you're a really good meditator and you can control this? A physician named Andrew Weil in Arizona wrote a book on spontaneous healing, these spontaneous remissions. And if you look at medical literature, there's a lot of cases of tumors vanishing without chemo, without months of waiting. And there's a lot of explanations. And some of them sound cool and some of them sound kind of BS. But there's a hospital in China where a woman has a tumor on ultrasound. People do some chanting and stuff over her, and the tumor vanishes in ultrasound in real time. And whether you believe it, whether you not, this is something that may or may not be possible if you follow this rabbit hole. So, if we need to learn a lot about exercise and nutrition to practice Olympics, and we say we know enough about the mind and consciousness that we don't have to study it, we'll never learn anything. If we snap to a judgment based on something we heard from a skeptic a long time ago, or a societal norm, we'll never learn anything. We used to think germs were caused by demons. We used to think neurons couldn't regenerate. We used to think the world was flat. So if anything in this resonated with you, even if it's just you can control your stress response, realize that by seriously researching something like this, you have access, even if it's just your own stress and emotions. And so the other cool magic powers are, can we do things like make fireballs? That's really fun, but I'm not going to get into it now. And so through the last couple of years, through researching all this, through studying with shamans and energy healers and all these people in neuroscience, I thought, is any of this real? Is any of this, as Arthur C. Clarke said at the beginning, magic that just science we understand real? And I found stuff that was and stuff that wasn't, and then I wrote about it. And so I'm ending with a few presents for you. And this is for reference if you happen to get the slide deck, or if you want to take a quick photo, I'll go through these slowly. Here's some basics on how to start meditating. And this is just something that you can save or you can Google if you haven't had a practice already. This goes into gray matter, a little bit more detail. The stuff in your mind that makes you smart, the stuff in your mind that previously or still you think is you. And these are a few books I really recommend on the spectrum of some of the topics we've discussed. Pranayama means life breath in rough translation. And here's a few brief exercises to help calm the nervous system, to help just literally use breath to affect your experience. Chakras are energy centers. They're part of this whole subtle body anatomy if you're curious about that. And here's a bunch of links you can follow. The most useful one for most people in this room and watching are the types of meditation you can practice. So again, there's Zazen meditation, there's mindfulness, there's visualization. So this goes into all of them in detail. And then there's a bunch of other links that you might find useful. And that's all. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Great recommendations for somebody who's completely new to all of this and just wants to get started with some sort of mindfulness practice?
Yeah, if you just want a mindfulness practice, if you just want to get started, I'd recommend the top 2 links. So to get convinced of meditation, benefits are great, but for the practice, this wouldn't be our website. It goes into the types of them in detail. And I found YouTube to be the best teacher. It's free. It has everything. There's visualizations. There's people you can work with. So if you just type in YouTube meditation for peacefulness, it's there. If you're curious that apps that can help you, this lists about 7 of them and gives reviews. And a lot of meditation apps are really excellent tools for helping you in real time for calm, for peacefulness, for whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. I go through periods of mindfulness, and then I completely forget about it, and I know it helps me, and I feel it in the moment, and oftentimes I'll do it once, and it will feel awesome, and then 6 days will pass, and I don't do any of it, and I don't know.
How do you build the practice as a habit that you don't stop?
I mean, yeah, I guess that's one way. That's one way to look at it. Sure.
Okay, so I'd relate it to brushing your teeth. We all know if we stop brushing our teeth for a day or 2, our breath smells, and we're pretty much fine, but we notice it and it feels kind of icky. But if we stop brushing our teeth altogether, in a short period of time or long, based on your diet, your teeth will rot and you'll have consequences, and those will not be pleasant consequences. So as you learn to pay attention to the quality of your mind and your consciousness, and you learn to just realize and recognize that, like your teeth, like your gums, you can link meditation to brushing your teeth. And so, how do you simply do it? I recommend tying it to a specific part of your life and doing it every day until you get to the level where you can do it every day. So I meditate at night before I brush my teeth, actually link it to that very habit. And I meditate in the morning before I check my phone. And anytime we check our phones, even if it's to open a meditation app, it can just pull us into text, it can pull us into email. It's really not ideal. And so finding music when I meditate, I have my iPad or my computer open on a video or on a music widescreen, so I can't see or click on anything else. Or I just meditate without technology. Who knew that was possible? And so other ideas for you are just find why you want to meditate and try to link and anchor meditation to that very deeply. And we can talk more after this about your personal situation. We had one over there, and then the next. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Is there any evidence or experiments showing chakras?
There's a lot of stuff, and so it depends on who you want to look at and what you want to see. If you want to look at the scientific measurements of wavelengths of light that are associated with these parts of energy, you can Google that and look for that. If you want to look at the organs associated, you can find that. Can we go back to the screen share, please?
Sure.
Thank you. I had a book in this presentation that I'm going to click back to that can go into it in a lot more detail. And so this solid body book here is extremely thick. You can get it on Kindle, and it's neuroanatomy plus energy body or chakras. And taking energy, let's just call it the electromagnetic body. We know humans have a biofield and electromagnetic field. So that's a really good place to start. But I also recommend Googling stuff. I'd recommend getting familiar with terminology, using resources that you know and that you like. I've looked at hundreds of books. My knowledge of chakras really, though, wasn't from studying anatomy. I wanted stuff that I could practically use and feel. And so I actually enrolled in a certification program where they taught stuff for you to feel different things related to chakras. And they went over, okay, like the root chakra is grounding, creativity, balance, sexual energy. The heart chakra is love. The third eye is intuition. And even if you take the whole chakra idea out of it, these are really nice ways of classifying personality and aspects of experience. So I'd say if you're serious, dive in, but that's a great book to start with. Yeah.
Just a couple of suggestions if anyone wants to develop a regular practice.
Yeah.
And this is partly from my own experience. I've been teaching this for a long time, but
Sure.
There's some very practical things. One of the most important is to meditate with a group regularly. They found this at Google. They've run this meditation course there, Search Inside Yourself, for years now, and they found that a lot of people went through the course, and a huge percentage of them didn't practice. No surprise, right?
Yeah.
So then they hired somebody, one of their own people, and his job was to solve this problem. And I spoke to about it and said the simplest, most effective thing they did was just set up regular group meditations in all their 14 campuses they had across the world at that time, and more than not just one day a week. So there's lots of opportunities to meditate with a group, and that made a huge difference. So that was one big thing. Is if you have a group, so you've got accountability, you've got the kind of moral support. You're not the only loony in the room, but also just the energy of meditating. Is very powerful.
It's extremely powerful. And so here at Facebook, if you guys wanted to organize a meditation or have somebody else come in and lead them, we could. I wanted this to be something educational, but if this group wants to meet regularly and have led meditations, I can come, Dada can come, anybody else who's qualified and experienced can come. You can even play a video. But meditating in a group does help a lot. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that's a really great suggestion. And for anybody here who may not come to another group event like this, or who might find a difficult time meditating in a group, because it's a wonderful suggestion, and as we build to it, we might be toying with the habit of finding a way to entrain your mind to what it means to be in a meditative state. So when you're with other people, you have the guidedness, you have everyone's facial expressions, you have the words, you have the location, you have the ritual sounds. But one cool piece of technology that all of us can access, called binaural or isochronic tones, that you listen to with headphones, that actually can take your brain to different types of states of awareness. And that can help you meditate when you don't have other people in your presence. And what I really recommend, if you can't go to a group, although a group is a wonderful suggestion, is play binaural tones while having a video open on YouTube of people meditating. And so if you see anything, you see faces that are peaceful, you see people who are breathing, and you can entrain your neurons with them. We have time for 2 or 3 more questions. Yeah.
So you were talking about how some types of meditations and awareness can heal. All through my childhood, I actually had kind of a weird awareness where, like, if I was in pain and didn't want to be in pain, I would talk myself out of it. Like, nope, I don't believe it. I'm not, nope, my foot doesn't hurt, so it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Eventually it would go away.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if you had any tips on how to, like, envelop that into a meditation style that keeps that awareness at a constant.
Yeah, so there's 2 things I would share. The first one is a basic medical disclaimer in that pain evolved to let us know something in our body needs attention. Mm-hmm. And so if I had a broken leg, or if my arm was chopped off, I'd probably go to the ER. In fact, I would. But what that type of awareness can be is, it takes a fair bit of training to do it at a level of mastery where you're constantly aware of your body's healthy state. I'd say the road to that is looking at types of meditating that involve visualization. So if you stub your toe and your toe is really swollen and it hurts to put on a shoe and it hurts to walk, and you, aside from putting ice, visualize your foot looking normal, the swelling going down, the blood circulating normally, running, playing soccer, kicking balls, and your foot being completely fine, there is some stuff that happens. And so the most effective technique from Bankston at that Society for Scientific Exploration is visualize your body in this state you would like it to be in. Everything else is a lot more details along the way. Visualize yourself fully functional, pain-free, and the rest will take care of itself. And if you want to look for the mechanisms of action, you can research those. And if you want to experiment with this stuff, I would never recommend injuring yourself. But ways you can experiment are things like cravings. So we'll do a really quick exercise. We have about 5 minutes left, yeah? So I'd like you guys to close your eyes and envision you're in a kitchen. And on the table, there's a cutting board and a lemon and a steak knife. And you take the lemon in one hand, and you take the steak knife in the other, and you cut the lemon, and you feel the resistance of the knife in your hand as you cut it. And you turn the lemon and you cut it again so there's a quarter of it. Then you look at it, and you see the texture and the pulp and the seeds. You tilt your head back, you hold it up, squeeze the lemon into your mouth. You taste the lemon juice. Now raise your hand if you're cringing or had any saliva. Yeah, most of us. So visualization can affect our body in really real ways. In the words of the Matrix, if your mind thinks it's real. So now let's go back into that kitchen. There's a glass of water or almond milk or whatever you like, and you drink it, you swish it around, the lemon taste is gone. And you go over to the cupboard, and you open the cupboard, and you find the tastiest dessert. It has all this magic, it has no calories, no sugar, so you can eat as much as you want. And we'll just go with a piece of chocolate, that's pretty common. But customize it, and take it from the shelf, and hold it in front of your eyes. See its texture. Feel it start to melt a little bit in your fingertips. Put it under your nose. Sniff. Now take it and bite it with your teeth. Just bite off half of it. Feel the texture in your teeth. And as it's in your mouth, chew it. Feel its texture on your tongue. Remember its taste in your life. Now, if you have any physical experience, you're smiling, you're salivating, whatever, raise your hand, please. Yeah. So, meditation, visualization, healing can work for cravings. If you're hungry and you can't get food, if you want a cigarette, if you want a drink, if you want anything else biochemical, if you want to be with a certain person, play a certain game, watch a certain movie, you can have that experience by visualizing it, using all your 5 senses. And that's really nice, because it doesn't just handle self-control. It's a great way to hack pleasure. And you can get any pleasure you want by creating a very deep, vivid fantasy. And if you do this for constructive purposes, and you visualize lifting weights, you can actually literally build muscle. And that's something that I invite you to research if you're curious. So we're just at time. I'm happy to hang